Welcome back everyone to RATube for another pro guide, this time for Ninja Gaiden on the Sega Master System, presented by Novice, narrated by Time Crush. Let's get into it. Now our specific task today is going to be trying to do these bosses damageless. The first 5 bosses are going to be shown beaten using the sword only, although it is possible to use our special attack, Ninpo, to make them easier to defeat. The final 3 boss fights utilize this Ninpo ability as they become much more difficult when attempted with sword only. Take a look. Our first boss on the menu is a massive sumo wrestler who slowly moves across the screen before shoulder charging into the walls at either end. The player needs to ensure they are pulling themselves up onto the wooden tree platforms before the sumo reaches the midway point and begins a shoulder charge. After the charge, watch the top screen for the falling red ninjas and position the character in between them to avoid being hit. With a little bit of finesse and a little bit of practice, this should be easy enough to accomplish. Moving on to our second fight, you want to start the fight by moving into a crouching position next to Oyabun as shown. Crouching will ensure that any attackers from the top left platform will jump over the player. If an attacker comes from the top right platform, then the player should quickly stand as to kill them as they land, before returning to the crouching position. All other attacks from enemies situated on lower platforms will miss the player, who can just continuously hit the boss. Rounding in third, a samurai who will walk slowly across the screen before dashing forward and slashing forward with a sword in a downward motion. When Tsutenkaku is walking towards the left of the screen, the player needs to position themselves approximately 4 background pillars away from him. Tsutenkaku will dash forward and swing his sword, but miss the player, allowing for him to be damaged. As the samurai gets close to the left edge of the screen, the player will need to wall jump over the boss and head to the right hand side to wait for Tsutenkaku to approach before wall jumping back over him. The player cannot repeat the same strategy as the samurai walks to the right, as Tsutenkaku will actually hit the player when he dashes right, compared to missing when he dashes left. Fourth on the list is Jet Ninja, a 2-phase fight with this flying monstrosity, with the first phase beginning as Jet Ninja heads to the top corners of the screen before descending straight down and firing off a spread of projectiles once he hits the ground. The player needs to hit the boss just prior to him landing and then run towards the opposite side of the screen while the projectiles spread out enough to allow the player to jump in between them. Phase 2 transitions once the boss reaches 50% HP. Jet Ninja will now drop down from the top right corner to the bottom middle of the screen, before firing off a spread of projectiles like before. The player should position themselves on the right hand side of the screen in order to jump between the projectiles. They can hit the boss as he flies back from the top left to the top right by jumping and attacking while he's in his upwards movement. Coming in next is Ice Monster. He has the ability to burrow into the ice and then reappear in another section. There are 4 platform locations that he can reappear in, which he'll always do so in the same order. The order is upper right, lower left, upper right, lower right. The speed at which the boss transitions between these platforms, as well as his attacks, increases the longer the fight goes on. The player needs to kill the boss as quickly as possible to avoid being overwhelmed. Ice Monster will always use the same 3 attacks in sequence, a high projectile, a low projectile, and a block of ice that will slide along the platform before dropping into the ocean. When the boss is on either of the top platforms, he's unable to be hit safely with the sword. The player can use Ninpo here, like the homing fireballs, if they have them available. When the boss is about to transition to either location on the lower platform, the player can already be hanging from the top platform to land the hit as he appears. Then they will need to climb the top platform to avoid being hit by the high projectile, before returning to the hanging position to land more hits while Ice Monster fires his low projectile and sliding ice block attacks. Coming into our last handful is Stone Monster. The Firewall Ninpo ability makes this no damage fight much easier to complete. The counterpart of Ice Monster, Stone Monster begins the fight by landing in segments from the top of the screen. He is only vulnerable once all his segments have landed together, and only for a single hit. Once the hit is landed, the player should begin running to the opposite side of the screen while activating the fire wheel, as Stone Monster will pound the walkway and drop the nearest 2/3 of it into the lava below. Fire Wheel should negate any damage from the falling stalactites as the player makes their way to the opposite side of the screen. The destroyed section of the walkway will reappear, and the Stone Monster will again drop from the ceiling in segments, specifically where the player is standing. The strategy can be repeated constantly until the boss is dead. Coming into our semifinals is Kabuki. The homing fireball Ninpo helps ease the difficulty of this fight, and is useful for the final boss who appears immediately after this fella goes down. His first projectile type is in the form of 2 fans, which will home in on the player's location. Kabuki's second projectile type is his horned Oni mask. He will throw this either at the player's head, which the player will have to duck, or at his feet, which the player will have to jump over. The Big Bad, the Shogun of Darkness, is another 2-phase fight. We'll assume that the player has the homing fireballs from the previous fight, since the Shogun shows up immediately after Kabuki is defeated. The first phase has similarities to the Tsutenkaku samurai fight. While the player spams the homing fireballs, Shogun will move slowly across the screen before slashing with a sword. Each sword slash will generate 4 waves of fire that travel along the bottom of the screen towards the player, and they can all be avoided via the use of wall jump. Phase 2 begins when Big Bad Shogun's health bar has been depleted. He'll transform into his true form and start flying across the top of the screen in a wave pattern. 3 times he'll fire a yellow projectile that'll attempt to home in on the player. Next, the Shogun will call 3 pillars of lightning from the top of the screen based on the location of the player. By moving at the appropriate time, the player will manage to move out of the way as these descend. The Shogun will then move from the top of the screen to the bottom and continue to move horizontally in this wave pattern. The player will need to keep a close eye on the Shogun's positioning and ensure they correctly time jump over him as he moves from side to side. Thanks all for tuning in for another episode of the RetroAchievement Guides, presented by Novice, narrated by Timecrush. See you next time.